Hello and welcome to Crucible of Words for more dedicated legacy action. Today I've got a donation deck to play a Rainbow Depths build. So those who are unfamiliar, we get a Dark Depths, it has some counters on it. When it's got no counters on it, we get a 20/20. We can either pay 30 mana over the course of 3 mana installments, or we can remove all the counters with Hexmage, or we can copy it with Thespian Stage and the copy doesn't have counters, and that's how we're making a 20/20. We have fast mana to make this happen as quickly as possible. Then we have tutors to find our pieces, so Sylvan Scrying and crop rotation. We've got some defensive spells like Not of This World to protect it from removal, Pithing Needle to protect our lands from Wasteland, and we've got some hand disruption to pick out some scary bits. And then we have a few copies of Stifle which kind of can protect against some removal spells, things like the trigger off of a Solitude or the activation of a Karakas, as well as also protecting us from Wasteland. So it's kind of not as good as any of the other pieces, but it's more flexible is the idea on that one. Buried in our mana base, we've got ourselves a Sejiri Steppe to protect our Dark Depths when we're using crop rotation there. We've got a Ghost Quarter which can take out a scary thing our opponent's got. We've got one of Bojuka Bog because sometimes you just need to wipe your opponent's graveyard or you're going to lose the game. And we have the Boseiju that we can then tutor for with a Scrying to blow up a problem permanent. We've got 8 Rainbow lands and 4 Urborgs, and that's all we're doing with our mana. So this is definitely a lighter mana build than some of the other builds I've played. This is more or less the exact list that a player plays in a lot of events on Magic Online, and the name crops up every now and again, pretty much playing nothing but Turbodepths, so I thought it's about time we gave it a jam, and the donor agreed. Sideboard wise, we've got Tower of the Magistrate. This allows us to push through artifact blockers, so Canoptek Scarab Swarm making a bunch of tokens, we can say, okay, we can just push through that. We've got a Karakas, which we can bring in to bounce our opponent's creatures. I'm not a big fan of the Karakas. I usually find that if you're going to find the Karakas, you're probably already losing, and this is just going to make you lose slower, and that's not really how I like to play. You will find situations where it's handy. We got 4 4 Force of Vigor here, so that we can try and jam a Blood Moon right out of play if that gets in, as well as a few scary artifact permanents. Because we don't have basics, I don't really like running Abrupt Decay, which is the one change I make to the sideboard really. We've got a couple of Dismember for things like Mages of the Moon, Opposition Agent, and we've got Graveyard Hate in the form of Surgical Extraction and Leyline in the Void. Ordinarily, I would recommend running Inquisition over these Duresses in the main deck in a Rainbow build because we have less ways to interact with an opposing Blood Moon once it's in play. So having more things that can take any sort of Blood Moon effect out would be more preferable in my opinion. So the only changes I really made was I removed the Abrupt Decays for some Force of Vigors. Because usually if we're trying to Abrupt Decay with this particular list, we basically need to have a Lotus Petal and an Elvish Spirit Guide, or 2 Lotus Petals, which is a bit of a tall ask in my opinion. Alright, so that's the deck. I've played Turbodepths many times on this channel, different flavours, so let's play it one more time, I guess. Remember to like and subscribe, and let's make some 20/20s. Right, we are on the play for round 1. We have a bit of a problem though. None of our lands tap for mana, so we are going to be sending this one back. So this one has the Hexmage and has a bunch of protection. That will leave us looking for one of 12 cards. I think we need to mulligan and go for something better. This is technically better. I guess we keep this and we bin a couple of Urborgs. So I think we're just going to play out the first Urborg. This way, if we draw a Dark Depths, we can just go. Alright, a Volcanic Island. Not a Wasteland, so that's good. A Ponder. So we could be looking at a Delver style variant, or we could be looking at some sort of more control-y deck. Aiming to go bigger. Like Grixis, or possibly like a Hot Pants style deck. A fair few options. Do we just jam? I think we just jam. We've kind of got a redundant combo going on, so we can just jam. If they answer this, we can just go and get it again with the Confluence. Right, Force of Will pitching a Ponder. That doesn't give us any more information about our opponent's hand. We can send it next turn. We can also go and get a Thespian Stage if we need to. If they've got a Wasteland here, then we can obviously just Scrying. Alright, they didn't have a Wasteland. When it rains, it pours, I guess. So let's play this Mana Confluence. Black, black. Let's have another Hexmage. They're cracking Misty Rainforest. Have they got any Surveil lands? So I think we're supposed to make this in the draw step. Because if we get hit by a Wasteland, that's pretty bad news for us. And we can just resend it because we have the pieces in hand. I'm more expecting a Wasteland from our opponent, but if they are a control deck and they just Shoulder's Edict us here, then that was always going to get us, really. Our opponent should know if they're dead or not. Alright, they are dead. It took a while to think about it, but they didn't get through it. So I don't know much about our opponent's deck. So they're going to be Grixis, I'm expecting here. Possibly Delver, possibly a more control-y type build. What does that mean for our sideboarding? Sylvan Safekeeper can protect against Brazen Borrower, but won't do anything against Shoulder's Edict. Not This World is a free spell that does the same thing as Sylvan Safekeeper. I think it's just better. I don't believe our opponent's going to have Blood Moon. I haven't seen Blood Moon out of Grixis decks or Grixis Delver deck. Grixis Control or Grixis Delver. We don't really want Dismembers here. Leyline of the Void can slow some opponents down. I think we're just going back in, is what the solution there is. So this is a turn 3 with protection. We will keep that. It also doesn't really provide any Force of Will targets until we have the protection. So arguably we can wait another turn before we go off, depending on what sort of deck our opponent is running. A Tundra, okay. They kept that quiet, so we are looking at some sort of 4-colour deck, and our opponent disguised what they're playing quite well at the end. So this matchup is going to be a little trickier. I think we just start out with the Urborg. There's an argument for running the Gemstone Mine out there, so we can access Stifle and crop rotation, but I don't think it's another Urborg. Let's play our Thespian stage. So we're going to want more layers of protection here. So we're probably going to wait for additional mana. I don't think we wait for 2 additional mana, but maybe we do. Well, depends how much our opponent has up. Because they can't Force of Will our 2020, but they can Force of Will our Not of This World. And the chance of them having a removal spell here seems relatively high. Because why else are they keeping that hand? So if we're not going this turn anyway, we should probably play out the Gemstone Mine, in case they draw something like a Wasteland or something we want to stifle. The downside of this is our opponent might be able to tap out and just make something that we are worried about. I think I'm going to play out the depths. I wouldn't fault someone for playing out Gemstone Mine there, but this basically keeps our opponent honest. They can't tap out a white mana. And then we can just build up multiple layers of protection after this. We do still have 2 Not of This World, so maybe that's going to be enough. A 4th Eorlingus. Do I want to play into this or not? 4 cards on our opponent's hand. I think we make the 2020 and just rely on these 2 Not of This Worlds to get us there. Does expose us to a prismatic ending, but like I said, we've got 2 Not of This World. Maybe that's going to be enough here. Okay, we're going to see a plow here. I believe we are. Say no to this plow. They can Force of Will once, but they can't Force of Will twice here. Which is the calculation we made based on the number of cards in our opponent's hand. I'm hoping that we're going to get an old boarded version of this for Modern Horizons 3. That would make me very happy. That's the thing I most want from Modern Horizons 3. Old boarded Not of This World. What a weird little creature I am. Alright, and we got the match in pretty quick time there. Not of This World, when it's good, is great. That's what I'm going to say there. Our opponent tapping out there let us know that the shields would sort of down-ish. And we had like 2 pieces of protection that we could fire based on the number of cards in their hand as well. Alright, let's go to round 2. We are 1-0. We are on the play. We have a turn 2 with double protection. Alright, sometimes the magic gods are relatively kind. Oh, it's Tony as well. Okay, we're probably going to get wheeled pretty early on here. Tony Scapone is a famous Storm player and general combo player. We need to get to turn 2. I'm expecting to see a Lion's Eye Diamond Echo Vions. A Street Wraith. Okay. We on some sort of Doomsday? Oh no, we're doing something very different over there. I don't know what it is, but I like it. They target themselves with Mishra's Bauble. An Urza's Bauble. A Mishra's Bauble. I don't really know what our opponent is doing here. The reason they didn't target us with the first one is because they had 2 more. They had another Mishra's Bauble, so they were going to see ours anyway. If they see the top of theirs, they can know if they want to play the Bauble or hold it for Metalcraft or something. Cycling Street, right? Our opponent is putting cards in their graveyard, that's for sure. Don't really know what our opponent is up to. Am I expecting Wasteland out of this deck? Maybe. Could just be like a really weird draw from some kind of like scammy tempo deck, but I suspect, knowing Tony, it's something really wild. Maybe a deck that really wants to fill its graveyard up. A Dragon's Race Channeler. Okay. So we can wipe the graveyard to make sure this definitely can't block. A Gut Shot targeting us. Sure. So this could just be a prowess deck. That certainly sounds like it's within Tony's wheelhouse. Okay, so some kind of prowessy style deck. How much do I think they're going to be using the graveyard? Also, do I think they're going to be running Blood Moons? They got some basic mountains. So it certainly seems like a thing that they might have. So I think we have to bring in this package. We're not really worried about our creature getting targeted by anything, so we can get rid of these Not of This Worlds. Pithing Needle, we don't know if they're going to be running Wasteland. I think it's probably worth keeping them around just in case. The Duresses might not be as useful as we want them to be. Maybe let's trim a Pithing Needle and a Duress. And we can use the Stifle as like Wasteland cover. Obviously it requires us to keep a mana up, which is why I'm not so hot on them. Yeah, this plays. This beats Blood Moon. And also, we can just go and get a turn 2 Hexmage if we want it. Monastery Swift. Yeah, so we are on some kind of prowessy style deck here. Just a deck full of cyclers. And it's going to have that little bird in, I think. I can't remember what his name is. Like Quick something or other. Speedy Dan or whatever you want to call it. I genuinely don't know what that card is called. But it's a bird that has plot, but then also gets +2/+0 whenever you cast a spell. And it's got haste as well, so you can plot it and then just play it for free the next turn and dump out your hand. A Lava Spike. Yep, that's 3 damages. We should race this with what we've got over here. We can take 2 from this. Thespian stage. Let's get the Urborg. Play our friendo. In our opponent's upkeep, we'll make this. Wasteland is a thing they could have, and it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that our opponent has some kind of sudden shock. That's the level of depth that Tony will go to make a deck. Please get Shoulder Edicted here. That's obviously going to be a bit miserable for us. Alright. Yeah, this is the sort of deck that Turbodepths tends to be pretty good against. A deck that's just trying to clock you in a fair fashion. I would say that Goblins, when we had Sticker Goblin legal, was not trying to clock you in a fair fashion, but you can still beat it. But yeah, I feel bad for saying be gentle to us now. I was expecting him to multiply and just ruin our day. But yep, we got another win on the board. 2 rounds in already. Let's go to round 3. So we've got a turn 4 hand. That is too slow for Legacy. We're going to mulligan that. Okay, this is a turn 2 with Thoughtseize. That's very much my jam there. I think we're going to get rid of Gemstone Mine here. Or we could get rid of that. I just don't want to get griefed and lose our Hexmage. So I think it is the Gemstone Mine that goes. Now, they could grief, reanimate grief, and take both of our cards. Are they going to discard over there? No, they're just a second main phase hipster. Understood. So who are we working with? I don't think I want to play out the Petal here. To play around a Daze. I don't really want to burn it on that. Could see a Brainstorm here. It's very much the difference between going first and going second is how good your Thoughtseizers are. Alright, a white mana source. That's not my friend usually. I think they'll be more likely to keep something like a Source to Plowshares in their hand because Mana Confluence tends to be more combo-y focused as a mana production land. So I would expect our opponent to maybe keep a Plow in. Ending, Plow, Dreadnought, Daze. Okay. Take the Plow. That might tell our opponent a little bit about what we're up to. We're definitely not playing out the Petal into an ending. So rewarded for that choice. Flooded Strand. They're just going to make a large creature right now. Because we do not beat the large creature. Actually, no, we can beat the large creature. No, we don't beat the large creature, right? Because of the Daze and the ending. Because we can't play it. We can play it and block a Phyrexian Dreadnought next turn, but that doesn't work for us. Because if we play a Hexmage out, they will just Daze it. But if we don't play a Hexmage out, what are we doing? We can get hit for this by once if we make a guy in the end step. I guess we can then draw an answer. So we force them to... We can eat the Dreadnought, and then we can force them to ending. And that probably ends up a little better for us overall. Let's play out this Lotus Petal. I think I'm going to play out this Urborg, which allows us to play a Hexmage this turn without taking any damage. Not that damage really matters when we're taking hits of 12 in a go. And if this makes our opponent burn their Prismatic Ending, then that's good to me. Why did this deal 1 damage to us? Did I click the wrong option? I thought I clicked the right one there. Again, I don't think that 1 damage matters, but we shouldn't be taking damage from that because of the Urborg. We're going to take 12 here, which is not an insignificant life total. Maybe our opponent would have let us just cast this Hexmage. Maybe we're supposed to play into that line. Okay, so we got the pending off. Would I like this in my graveyard or would I like it exiled? I don't think it matters. Alright, our opponent's just given us an out here, which is the thing I was playing for. So we know our opponent's hand, so we have perfect information. As it stands, we are winning this game. But our opponent gets another draw step. And they might have a Surveil land, so they get to... I don't think this Duress matters right now. We'll play this around a daze. We may as well take the daze. Let's try and tap this correctly. Black. That's fine by me. Am I going to pay for this? No, because we know what their hand is. So our opponent's deck probably runs Wastelands. So we do have to make this, but that plays into Prismatic Ending. We haven't seen any Wastelands yet, so they're more likely to have a Wasteland than they are to have an additional Prismatic Ending. Alright, here's a Surveil land. Put 1 card on top of their library. If that's a Wasteland, then that sucks for us. I think we make it now to try and dodge the Wasteland. If it's a Prismatic Ending, that's bad for us. If it's a Source of Plowshares, we at least gain 20 and have an opportunity to maybe mount some sort of comeback. Okay, it was a Brainstorm. So I want 3 looks instead of 1. That's pretty reasonable. So Strand, they got another cantrip here. Another Brainstorm, yep. So we've got to see 6 different cards this turn. Alright, so it's a Plow. So we bought ourselves another turn. But I don't think that's good enough. So an Elvish Spirit Guide. We can cast this at the cost of our Lotus Petal. That will keep us alive for a turn. I think that is worth doing. We don't have to spend our Lotus Petal, I suppose. Like, what is the difference between 1 life? This will put us at 1, which will turn off our Mana Confluence next turn. But we'll have the... It won't turn off our Mana Confluence, actually, because we'll have the raw mana from it. Right, okay. So we are just casting this, taking 1 life. So we chump block for a turn. Maybe next turn we draw Dark Depths or Crop Rotation. So we can always tap the Confluence for black off of the Urborg. So we have more raw mana for next turn. I ponder. Opponent seems to be on a straight up blue-white build. Right, this will put us to 1, provided I can do maths. Yeah, okay. That's not the 1, okay. Dreadnought, you say? Dreadnought. I like the sound of Force of Vigor here. I also like the sound of Sylvan Safekeepers to protect our creatures. We don't really need a Bojuka Bog in this matchup. The fast mana is fine. Duress, Thoughtseize, all pretty handy here. Where am I sat on the Stifle plan here? Not big into it. Do we need all of these Force of Vigors? Can we just play 3? And then we just trim on like a Duress or a piece of fast mana probably. It's better. Something like this. Alright, let's try it. So we're on the play. What does our hand do? We go turn 1 Thoughtseize, turn 2 Dark Depths with protection. Okay, yep. It seems like where I want to be in my life. Getting to Thoughtseize before our opponent gets to Brainstorm is pretty tasty. They have a Wasteland over there. They've got a Plow. Force of Negation is good to know about as well. I'll take the Plow. Do we take the Plow? We kind of have the Plow covered. Our opponent is probably going to try and Wasteland us. We get rid of the Force of Negation. I'm going to take the Plow. There's a Wasteland. Force of Vigor. Because of this Stifle that we know is over there, we can't just make our... Sorry, not the Stifle, the Force of Negation. We can't just make our creature. But I suppose we could just play a Hexmage. And we have the surprise crop rotation in our opponent's turn. They do have a Wasteland that we have to respect. But we have a Ghost Quarter that can answer that next turn. So this basically means our opponent has to keep their stuff up. A Tundra, sure. Sejiri Steppe isn't really the one here, is it? This eats a Doorkeeper Thrall, so I'm happy to attack into it. Our opponent might feel safer this turn now that we didn't do anything with our mana. Flooded Strand. Oh, we've got some reasonable resources here. Let's go for this. They can stifle this. Let's do this. We know they got a Force of Negation. That's why we're doing it on our opponent's turn here. Also, we can make a 20/20 end step. A Brainstorm. So they can stifle the Hexmage activation here. Start depths. If we make this now, they just crack the fetch land and stifle. A Duress. Alright, we are somewhat punished for our play there. Then we do play this out for the purposes of having more mana in coming up turns. Right, so they've got Stifle up. And they shuffled away some Brainstorm cards. We don't really know what they have here. Okay, so we're back in this trap again. Blue-white decks are kind of a bit of a pain for us. Alright, let's go to attacks. So if we Duress our opponent, they might start the fight here. They have double Stifle. I see. That is kind of irritating, isn't it? How are we supposed to beat double Stifle here? If we just take Stifle... They can't... I guess they could just play a land and then play Teferi, bounce this, and then stifle our trigger if we go to activate it. Are we taking the Teferi and just trying to beat down until our opponent has to tap out? But they can just make a Dreadnought this coming turn. And that doesn't go amazingly for us, does it? Don't really want them to have all these stifles. Yeah, our opponent's got so many tools here that are good against us. Teferi holding up Stifle, bouncing our only bit of pressure is kind of annoying. If they commit to the Dreadnought, maybe we get to blow them out with the Force of Vigor. I think it's a Teferi. We just don't get to protect ourselves against the Teferi anyway. It's a Duress, so we couldn't take the Dreadnought, even if we wanted to. But they spend some resources on a Dreadnought, and then we find a green card, and we just Force of Vigor it away. That's really irritating for our opponent. And, you know, we can find Thespian stage. This is the first round we knew about. They're fully on defense mode here. Right, we've got Thespian stage now. We've got multiple layers of combo. But they do have it beat with 2 Stifles. But they have to hold up these 2 Stifles, which means they can't commit the Dreadnought. And maybe the Vampire Hexmage gets to go to town. Bit of a peculiar spot, this one. We're going to see a Meticulous Archive, I imagine, here. There it is. We need something like a Pithing Needle to really break this one open. Problem is, we play a Pithing Needle, and that still doesn't go great for us because they've got 3 layers of interruption. You have to do the Hexmage before you do the stage usually, because the stage becomes a copy, so you lose your original Dark Depths, so your Hexmage doesn't work. Okay, my internet went down, but we're still going here. So they were just getting a Meticulous Archive. I'm hoping it's not the roadworks outside my house where they've hit a cable. That would be annoying. But it should have been finished by this hour, so I'm hoping it's just general internet stuff. Alright, so now we're doing this one on tethered from my phone connection. So hopefully it won't be too laggy. A Phyrexian Dreadnought from our opponent. Sure. Are they going to stifle this? They are. So if we go first and activate this, they can then wasteland this. Then we do this, they stifle it, and then we get nowhere. So we need a little bit more action. Not This World is probably not going to do it. So we need to find a green card or another rainbow land so we can blow up this Phyrexian Dreadnought, because it's going to be smashing us up pretty good here. We need something off the top. Another Dark Depths. What does that actually do here? So if we play this on this, they can wasteland it, and then they stifle our trigger. Maybe we hope they don't know the correct time to stifle. That's our solution here, which feels terrible, but that's what we've got to do. So they should just stifle the Thespian stage activation, but sometimes people make the mistake and stifle the triggered ability of the Thespian stage, which then just re-triggers again as soon as the stack clears. But that's the level we're playing at now, so let's hope our opponent makes a mistake. Not the situation I like to be in. Okay, they're stifling this one. Let's try this. Our opponent's just going to use their wasteland, I believe. So they're going to wait for this one, and then they're going to wasteland this one. Yep, we are toast. Blue-white decks are kind of the bane. Like green-white, blue-white, those are sort of the worst things you want to play against with this deck usually. So obviously Bant is not my friend. But yep, so taking our first hit there. But we're still 1-2. Let's keep going and hopefully my internet will be fine. Alright, I think my internet is fine again, which is always a good sign. So what does this hand do? We got some Thoughtseize action. Crop rotate. We do get there here with a little bit of protection. I like this one. And then we have to Thoughtseize on turn 1. And we're probably going to do this off the Gemstone Mine. I don't want our opponent to wasteland us here. Oof. Intriguing. Our opponent doesn't have a turn 1 play here aside from the Grief. Unless they draw the correct land. The Plough is obviously a real pain for us to deal with. But we can't have our Grief. We can't have our crop rotation hit either. We can always hit the Plough later. Okay, we're going to take the Grief. Our opponent is on the black-white scam deck. Right, there's a Shadowy Backstreet. Pest Control. That's not Exile, which is Destroy. So, I think we take the Plough here. And then we turn our Gemstone Mine into a Dark Depths. We could just reanimate the Grief here. Cycling a Troll of Khazad-dûm, that's more or less free to do. We could go and get... If they go and reanimate here, we could just go and get a Bojuka Bog. I don't hate this as a play. Take this out. Because we've already got the crop rotation anyway. And this stops them having a clock, so it ends up the same except our opponent doesn't have a creature in play. Which seems a-okay to me. This is a 2020 when we want it. Play around a wasteland here. Maybe. Right, so we have to go in response to this Thoughtseize. Because our opponent just wants to get a threat on board. A Stoneforge Mystic. I can live with that one. Our opponent has one mystery card that we hope isn't a Solitude. Because then we lose. Get Dark Depths. Copy the Dark Depths. Bash. Alright. We got there. So, what do we want for a matchup like this? Graveyard Shenanigans, certainly useful. As is things like Surgical Extraction. Sylvan Safekeeper, for all their white removal, feels pretty essential too. They are a wasteland deck. I don't actually think we want the Bojuka Bog, even though it did something there. Stifle. Like the Pithing Needles, they will allow our opponent to have a pest control option. Whereas the Stifle doesn't do that. But the Stifle requires us to have so much more mana if we're trying to do like one big turn. Stifle can deal with Karakas as well. You came in to watch Rainbow though, so we should keep the Stifles in. Alright. That's what the people wanted. I'll try this one. So Leyline is an option. Our opponent's not doing like really big things. How do I feel about Duress? It hits Swords to Plowshares. We want that in. I also like that Surgical can just strip out all our opponent's plows if that's a thing we need to do, or if we know our opponent's got more. This does not make a 2020, so we're going to mulligan this one. This does not do anything, so we're going to mulligan this one. This does something. We'll keep this one. I think we put back the Ghost Quarter and... Oh, that's a tough call. How useful is this Surgical Extraction going to be? I don't think it's actually going to be very useful. Because if they grief us, they just take this and then play the next thing. So I think we're going to put this one back for now. Thoughtseize. Alright, you can take our Vampire Hexmage. They did take our Vampire Hexmage. Not a surprise. We're going to cast this now while our opponent can't Duress out of our hand. And just make sure we have the combo sewn up in our hand. Get some protection later. We're just trying to dodge Wasteland now. Right, you can take our Stifle. Obviously we're trying to dodge like plows and that sort of jazz as well. We've got two of these, so we can play one out. Shadowy Backstreet, that is not a Wasteland. That is a good sign for us. I would very much like to draw... Is this going to be a Stoneforge, I think? I'd very much like to draw a Not of This World. That would make me feel quite safe here. A Lion Sash. Don't care about that. That's an interesting take. Let's see, how about Depths? I think we have so many draws that do something for us here. That's not one of them, though. Our opponent didn't put in the Lion Sash at end step, which suggests to me they have multiple levels of removal and trying to leverage. We've got a bunch of discard spells. They're pretty useful. Yes, I would very much like to cast this Elvish Spirit Guide. Sorry, yeah, this Sylvan Safekeeper off the Elvish Spirit Guide. This gives us 2 layers of protection against what our opponent's working with. We're going to get a Lion Sash in here like they should have done last turn. Yes. Are they going to eat something? They are eating our Hexmage. Sure. I don't want to see pest control here. There's a Wasteland. That is an annoying one. Sure, they're going to grow and do a little bit of extra damage. Maybe we're supposed to have played our... Try and make a 20/20 in their upkeep. To play around the Wasteland. A Hexmage is not a bad draw here. So we go black, black. Cast Hexmage. As soon as this resolves, we put in the other Urborg. Then we have 2 layers going. Yeah, that was a bit of a... Yeah, we just completely punted there. We're supposed to play the Urborg out first. Oh my god, what a horrible spew that was. Yikes. Yeah, we just absolutely punted that game. Oh dear. Them eating our Turbodepths tells us they probably don't have a Surgical Extraction in their deck. Now this can just kill this, if we're worried about it, but I think we just take 4 for another turn. Or 5, as the case may be. But we can just first strike this down. And then sack it. Not of This World. Okay. Oh, what a terrible mistake that was. It's going to haunt me. This is our opponent's only threat. Let's just delete this. Swords, 2 Plowshares. We made a mistake there as well. We should have floated mana so that we could copy their swamp. A Boseiju Who Endures. That allows us to cast any of our tutors if we draw one next turn. To be fair, our opponent had the plow, so we weren't going to win off the mistake we made before anyway. It's still annoying though. Yep, powerful 1/2 beats. A Grief. Sure, it doesn't do anything to our hand. It takes out the Not of This World, which would have been nice if we could assemble our combo, but that's already been taken away from us. I guess no, we had the plow beat with the Sylvan Safekeeper. It was just a massive punt. Gonna reanimate that Grief. I want the Lion Sash. It's an interesting take. I guess when I played this deck I found it was quite threat light. And this does beat for more than a Grief quite often. Just get ourselves a swamp there. A crop rotation, you say? What am I sacrificing? I don't really want to sacrifice my only green source. If you sacrifice the Urborg, that's kind of annoying. We can sacrifice a redundant Thespian stage, but that's kind of partway towards our next combo if we have to do another combo. But I don't think we're going to do another combo. Getting rid of Urborg or a Thespian stage. Let's get rid of a Thespian stage here. Okay, so we have protection against 2 removal spells. So our opponent has to have 3 removal spells. They also need another white source. We might have found a way through here. This doesn't gain life. A Solitude. What are you going to target with this Solitude? Presumably our massive creature. Alright, we got the match. We made a mistake and still won, so I don't really feel like I deserve to win that one. And this is not an easy matchup. But what I will say about these scam decks is they sometimes really struggle to apply a decent amount of pressure if they don't get their super grief turn 1. But alright, we managed to get through there. Sylvan Safekeeper looking pretty good actually there. Not bad. Let's go to the final round. We're currently 3-1, so let's see if we can put a 4-1 on the board. This opening hand does not really look like one I want to keep, so we're going to mulligan this one. Alright, this is, what, 1, 2 mana. Tap this for 2. Turn. Okay, this is a turn 2 2020. Sign me up. This is what I came here to do. Uh-oh. Uh-oh. This is not a friendly matchup. Expedition map. Okay, so how are we supposed to beat this start? I don't think we can. I think we have already lost this game now. We need our opponent to make a mistake. That could help our opponent make a mistake. So we can go and get a Ghost Quarter, perhaps. I think we win. We don't win the Dueling 2020s, right? Because they have a Karakas in their deck. A Sylvan Library. Okay. A Sphere of Resistance. That is an annoying one, isn't it? So next time they can just go and crack, get what they need, and put us in the dirt. We burn our Petal to make the Hexmage. Our opponent's got no cards in hand though, so we get to see what they tutor for, and then we can deal with it the turn after. I reckon it's our last best hope for a victory, I think. If they want to make a 2020 themselves, we beat that. That'll cost them this and this, so they won't be able to activate this and get something else as well. Or they are about to draw a bunch of extra cards. This matchup is horrible. Sometimes I feel I say that a lot, but there's so many good matchups in the format. You know, like your Bug Beans and your Delver, all flavors and varieties is very good too. Mono Red Prison. It's just the sort of control resource to Plowshares decks, or the decks with like big land packages, which is why Green White Depths is horrible, because it's like a land package and all of the white removal. Okay, so they have a Dark Depths too. They are getting an Expedition map going. What would you like to reveal, opponents? There is the Karakas. Okay, so they're getting a 2020. That is a slight issue, for sure. What do we want here? Not of this world? Oh, okay. So we make this and block. Then we have Not of This World for this activation, and then we untap and go get Sejiri Steppe to win. Alright, that's a plan, isn't it? Our friend's got one card in hand. They know some of the cards on top of the library from the Sylvan Library last time. Maybe we get there. As a Saga. Okay, I don't care about that. That's good. A Sphere of Resistance. So it costs us 2 mana for a Not of This World. And then 2 mana for our crop rotation. Or 3 mana for our crop rotation. So this will be 1, 2, 3. We don't need the crop rotation if they attack with the Marit Lage. And tap that Karakas. Say no. And that's the ball game right there. Block, they're indestructible, they bounce off each other. But they are tapped. We are not. So we get to crash through for lethal here. Bad matchup doesn't mean impossible matchup. Love it. Okay. Whew. Maybe this is a Karakas matchup. Maybe this is a Sylvan Safekeeper matchup. Also a bit on that one. So much of our sideboard has potential use here. I don't believe we're supposed to try and Karakas our opponent's creature out of play. I think that's a loser mentality right there. Why won't it let me drag these in? What's going on? There we go. Okay, so what do I not like here? The Bojuka Bog doesn't feel amazing. I don't really want to be spending a tutor on that. I think fast mana is something we're going to need. The discard spells feel pretty bad. Still leaves us 4 cards over where we want to be. I like the Not of This World because they have Karakas and Maze of Ith. We need those to push through. Stifle was doing a similar thing, but maybe this is too situational because we're going to need the mana up all the time for this to work. So maybe we can drop this. And do we want all of these ley lines? I don't think we do. I think that's too many ley lines. The surgicals are better because we can rip all the wastelands out of our opponent's deck, including ones in their hand when the time comes. Okay, we keep this. Play this. Name. Yeah, we play this. Name. Wasteland. They're also the white build, which means they do have plows and things in their deck. Not of This World is certainly one I'm happy to see. If we play out this Gemstone Mine, then next turn we can Urborg. So this makes sense. Play this. Name Wasteland. So next time we have a 20/20 with 1 layer of protection. Maybe we're doing it. Maybe I'm a little bit worried about this Urza Saga though. Right, so they've got a Thespian stage, have they? I'm a big fan of that. But we have the crop rotation, but this is our only green source. Ooh. They've tapped out. Okay. A Sphere of Resistance. That's a real pain, isn't it? So if we play out this Thespian stage, we can bash out this Urza Saga and this Sphere of Resistance in our opponent's upkeep. I think that is worth doing. So we hit this, and we hit this Saga. Pay 1, pitch a crop rot. So they can tap out for a guy here, which means they can't then Thespian stage us unless they've got an Ancient Tomb. And actually, that's not true. They can just play 2 lands, right? No, they can't because they're tapping the Thespian stage. Right, so they get a little guy. They don't get to tutor, which is the key part for us. Next turn, we get to make the Hexmage. Oh, they don't have another land. 3 cards in hand. How many of them are plows? All of them, most likely. Okay, this is an extra layer of protection as well. So we go... Actually, no, it isn't an extra layer of protection if we want to turn this into a thing that makes our Hexmage work. I think it's better to turn this into an Urborg. We're using less overall resources. So what are we worried about from our opponent? We've got Wasteland covered with the Pithing Needle. Karakas is annoying, for sure. They have their own Thespian stage. Yeah, that was a massive punt there. We should have done this before so our opponent couldn't stage and get their own copy. It's very sketchy. Right, we have a 20/20. They have a Source of Plowshares. We have a Not of This World. And maybe that's everything done then. Alright, we got the win and we got the 4-1. Very nice. Yeah. Feel pretty happy with how that went. We made a couple of errors there. So we made one in that last game and we made one against the scam player, which was the first game back after my internet was a little bit squiffy. But yeah, pretty good showing from the deck. Let's talk about the list. So I'm normally not a fan of Stifle, and Stifle never really was a thing that came up and did anything this league, which is my experience of playing Stifle. Sorry to say. What I will say is the Not of This World was very good. As always, very big fan of that one. Just to dive a little bit deeper into why I don't like Stifle. So Stifle requires you to hold up 1 mana all the time, and it has to be one of your rainbow lands, which might be one of your only green sources as well. So that turns off crop rotation and stuff if you need that. So the Stifle requires you to hold up the mana all the time and only interacts with a single iteration of a problem. Whereas a Pithing Needle can deal with every single wasteland. And you get to play it ahead of time, so you can play this on turn 1, go off turn 2 without worrying about wasteland. So it just makes your deck a lot quicker. And that's why I'm not a fan of Stifle. I think if you want to run Stifle as a 5th Pithing Needle, then full power to you. But I'm not really sure I like them here. Now, sometimes you're just going to get some free wins off of stifling a Storm Trigger or something random like that. And there is the added flexibility here. But do you know what you could play instead of Stifle? Is Tamiyo's Safekeeping. So that's green. Oh, let's pull it up, actually. So this is Tamiyo's Safekeeping. So it's a single green mana instant. Target permanent you control gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. You gain 2 life. So this can stop Karakas, it can stop Karakas, Swords to Plowshares, Solitude, Prismatic Ending, anything like that, as well as also stopping Wastelands. I just don't understand why we're running the Stifles instead of a Sylvan Safekeeper, Tamiyo's Safekeeping here, especially considering the fact that running these lands isn't free either. Like, these ones do disintegrate over time. This one hits us for damage, which can be relevant. If we had some other coloured cards on our sideboard, then sure, you know, if we're running things like Deafening Silence or like Sudden Shock type effects, although Sudden Shock is kind of a throw over to when you need answers because you're running a rainbow mana base. But I'm not wholly in love with this particular mana base, considering the spells we're trying to cast. So with these Stifles, if we just turned one of these Stifles into a Pithing Needle and the other 2 into Tamiyo's Safekeeping, then we could just turn all of these into, you know, like Bayous or the Blossoming Marsh, I think it's called, or even Llanowar Wastes. There's a whole bunch of options that you could run. You could still run the fetch land mana base as well if you wanted to. So 4 fetch lands, 2 bios, 1 forest, 1 swamp. And what that gives you is the ability to play around Abrupt Decay a lot more easily. To play the Abrupt Decay more easily in terms of Blood Moon, which is usually what I advocate. But overall, this build was fine. Like the Stifles was kind of like the heavy load we were carrying. I call it the Stifle Trap in my big guide to Turbodepths on my Patreon, which you should check out. It's in the description below. It gets updated every month, and it's very, very in-depth. But there's a little section on the Stifle Trap where I discuss how this particular card has the drawbacks that I've mentioned, and a lot of the time you want the other things. However, what is important to note is that the Stifle can stop storm triggers and a few other random things that might, sort of blow you up somewhere along the lines. It is very, very flexible, and I love this card. I don't really like it in this deck, but I do love Stifle because I'm one of those people. But the thing with Pithing Needle now is Pest Control is a card that exists and people are playing. So Pest Control can sweep up our Pithing Needles, and that is something to be aware of. I think when you're playing a Turbodepths deck, basically when you're looking at flex slots, so if we move these to one side over here, so this pile of 5 cards is what I would describe as like the flex slots in this sort of list. So we can have some more lands. I quite like having a Boseiju, a second Boseiju. You can have some Elvish Reclaimers. You can have some Safekeepers. You can have more Pithing Needles, more Not of This World. So if you have one more Pithing Needle, one more Not of This World, one more discard spell, that leaves you with maybe 2 slots if you want to keep with this sort of jam. But this deck was perfectly serviceable. I'm not really a fan of the Karakas, as I mentioned earlier. I don't think this is where you want to be in your Turbodepths decks, because whenever you're burning a cantrip to go and get your Karakas, you're getting a land that doesn't cast any of your spells and it's not helping you win the game. It's just making you lose the game slower, and I don't like that as a strategy. Tower of the Magistrate, I think this is a perfectly fine card to have in your sideboard. What you can do with it is when the Sejiri Steppe is bad, it quite often becomes a Tower of the Magistrate, so you can get through Canoptek Scarab Swarm type stuff. Although against the Cradle Control decks, they sometimes have Canoptek Scarab Swarm and Endurances you need to get through, so it's like, am I supposed to have both of them? That becomes a little bit of a trickier one. But you should hopefully be winning before they're putting a Canoptek Scarab Swarm into play, is how I like to see it. Other sideboard cards, like the Force of Vigor, was fine, but it actively won us a game against lands. The Leylines weren't really doing it for us. We weren't against the decks where we wanted Leylines. We weren't against the Echo of Eons decks, or the Dredge decks, or the Black-Red Reanimator style decks. So there was, or even like Rescaminator, anything which has an Entomb package. So this wasn't really what we needed in this particular league. Same with the Dismember, it wasn't really a thing that we had much call for. Surgicals were fine. We didn't really want them most of the time, but there were times we boarded them in and they could have been useful. The last card I need to talk about was Sylvan Safekeeper. This is a card that I'm generally not a big fan of because we kind of expend a lot of resources, especially if we're using turbo resources in terms of like Lotus Petals and Elvish Spirit Guides. But in the sideboard, this is a card that for just 1 mana can blank a whole bunch of your opponent's removal in those sort of blue-white control games where it's going to draw out for a while. And maybe I should take another look at Sylvan Safekeeper and have it as a sideboard option again. But what I will say is, once again, Pest Control is in the format now, and that can just sweep this up. So that is another thing to be aware of. And Pest Control is pretty good against Pithing Needles as well. So if our opponent's like an Esper deck with Wastelands, or the Black-White Scound deck which has Pest Control and Wastelands, they're probably going to keep the Pest Control in to deal with Pithing Needle to turn back on their Wastelands. So the Sylvan Safekeeper is going to get caught up in that. But again, if it doesn't, it does just win you the game a lot of the time. So maybe I'm going to take some more looks at the Sylvan Safekeeper. There is also the 2 mana enchantment. Let's just pull that up while we're here. The league was nice and quick, so you're getting extra long debrief from me today. So Steely Resolve is the other sort of card that does similar to the Sylvan Safekeeper stuff. This is harder to get on the battlefield because it costs 2 mana. And if this gets Prismatic Ending, it feels really bad. But you play this, you name Avatar, your Dark Depths has Shroud. And that's a perfectly serviceable way to protect your creature. I used to like this quite a bit back when White Plume Adventurer was legal. You just had this as your main thing that you would jam, and that would do a lot of work to protect your creatures from all of the white removal. So maybe like Sylvan Safekeeper and Steely Resolve are good to run again. And I'm just definitely going to experiment with them a little bit more than I have done recently. Obviously, we'll use the nicer art one of this little fellow. Why wouldn't you want this one instead, right? He's got a cute little spider friend. Anyway, I am going off on a tangent here. I think we showcased what this deck can do, and we did manage to win some difficult matchups as well, which shows you the power of this deck. What we're doing is quite linear and very strong, but answers to it are kind of backbreaking. So we have to build our deck around figuring out the puzzle of how do we slip through our opponent's answers. But your opponent has to have an answer. If they don't, then they just lose. And that is one of the strengths of this deck. Another one is that you can make a 20-20 without casting a single spell. Anyway, if you're interested in this deck, there's loads of videos on my channel. Check them all out. Join the Discord, which is a dedicated Turbodepths Discord for half of it as well. And check out the Patreon if you're really interested. It's in the middle tier of my Patreon membership and is a big guide to this deck. So why not take a look at it if this is something that interests you. It has both green-black Turbodepths and rainbow depths. All right. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to like and subscribe, and goodbye. If you'd like to support me in the channel, please check out my Patreon. It has a free guide to budget Turbodepths as well as 3 tiers of support. A low-cost one that enters you into my monthly raffle for a free donation deck on the channel, a mid-tier subscription that gives you access to my detailed Turbodepths guide that is updated every month as well as regular articles, and lastly, the higher tier gives you all of the above as well as a monthly donation deck for my channel. If you're interested in supporting the channel this way, please check out the link in the description.